Welcome back, everyone. I'm Jason Jensen, and in today's video, I'm going to answer all of your questions. All right, well, we have a ton of questions. And if I don't get to your question in this video, I'll be doing more Q&A videos in the future. And I'll let you know in advance so that you can re-ask your question that didn't get answered or ask a new question. So there will definitely be more videos coming up in the future with Q&A. Okay, well, the first question is, how did you get started in the hobby and how did you choose HO scale? Well, my grandfather was a model builder and he built cars, tanks, trucks, airplanes. He just loved building plastic kits. And then a friend of his had a model railroad in his basement, and my grandfather just sort of got hooked into it because of his friend, and then he built a large layout in his basement. Now, my grandfather's layout was 2 sheets of plywood. So they were put end to end, so it was 4 feet by 16 feet. Very simple. I think he just painted the whole thing green and then glued down some stuff that looked like grass. And then he just built tons of plastic structures. And he would build them straight out of the box. Never painted or weathered anything. Just he loved putting together plastic models. So when I was a little kid, I would go to my grandfather's house a lot, and I would just sit and watch the trains go round and round. And then he taught me how to do switching. And then as I got older, he taught me how to do electrical work, how to lay track, how to start to build structures. So really it was my grandfather who got me into the hobby, and because he modeled HO scale, that's what I modeled. I've had many people ask me about putting together plastic kits. I have one video on the channel that is completely dedicated to building a plastic structure. Then I have another video that I believe the bottom half was a plastic kit and the top half was a wood structure. I prefer working with wood over plastic, but I know that some people have a large stockpile of plastic kits that you want to build. And in my first video on building a plastic structure, you'll see I put a lot into it as far as texturing the wood or texturing the plastic to look like wood, painting it, doing multiple layers. It's just a lot of work, and I think it's a lot easier just to use wood rather than trying to make plastic look like wood. But again, I realize that a lot of people do have plastic kits. I do enjoy doing plastic kits that are brick buildings, and I'm sure I'll do more videos in the future with brick buildings that are plastic. I've had people ask me if I'm ever going to do a video building a structure and making it look new. I have zero interest in making a structure look new. The funnest part of the hobby for me is making a wood structure look old and run down. As most of you know, I love rust. I love making things just look old and rusty. And I think that there's an art form to it. I think that it takes a lot to make something look old and run down, and not just making it look old, but making it look believable. Like the weather actually made the wood look that way, or made the sign look that way. Now, don't get me wrong. I think there's an art to building a structure perfectly and staining it and painting it perfectly. I mean, there's craftsmen out there that completely do that. And it takes time to make everything perfectly square and just exact. But for me personally, I don't get any enjoyment out of that. I want my stuff to look really old, really run down. So my entire layout will look like that. Will look completely run down and completely neglected. And everyone should model what makes you happy. However you want your layout to look, that's how you should model it, because you're the one that's going to spend the most time with it. You may have people that come over and operate, or people that come over and look at it, but really most of the time it is just you and your models, you and your diorama, you and your layout. It is your hobby, so do it your way. Okay, next we have sealing pastels. I get asked this question so many times. Do you spray a sealer over the weathering powders after it's on? No, 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 no. Do not. Possibly if it's rolling stock and you handle it a lot, taking it on and off the layout, then I could see. But for me personally, on a structure or vehicle or anything that is just sitting on the layout, once you've weathered it, there is no need to put a sealer over it, because you're not handling it. It's just sitting there. And for those that haven't used pastels or pigments, you will be surprised how well they stay on the structure. It's not like they're going to eventually just fall off. They're on there and they're staying on there. So don't worry about them fading or eventually just completely falling off of the structure. They will stay, and you'll find that out when you actually use the pastels or the pigments. How I started Craftsman kits. Interesting, because my grandfather, like I'd mentioned, got me into the hobby. So I was building plastic kits. And when my grandfather passed away, I inherited all of his plastic structures that were on his layout. So because they were already put together, I just had to paint and weather them with them already being glued together. Some of the structures I was able to take it apart so that I could paint them more easily. But some of them I just could not get the structures apart, and I was just forced to paint and weather them completely assembled, which taught me a lot about using masking tape to mask my windows off, and coming up with different tricks, I guess, for painting and weathering structures that were already assembled. And it really taught me to get good, I guess, at painting stuff to make it look like metal or rust or wood. even though everything was plastic. So that was a good experience for me doing that. But then, let me get back to the question. I started looking online and looking in magazines and seeing these wood structures that just looked amazing, that people were just staining and painting. And I thought, man, that would just look or be so much easier than trying to make plastic look like wood. So I bought a very inexpensive kit, actually from Foscale Models, and put it together. And you know, I wasn't completely sold because I was so used to the plastic and applying paint heavier and doing the weathering on it maybe a little heavier than you would have to on wood. It just didn't turn out the way that I thought it would. So I went back to plastic for a very short time, and then tried a wood kit again after probably reading some articles in some magazines. I tried another wood structure and I had a lot better luck with it the second time around. Like I said, my first one I was too heavy-handed with painting and weathering, and so on my second Craftsman kit, I went a little lighter with it and really, I think maybe did some research ahead of time on how to handle it. After that second one, I think I was really hooked. I was really, really happy with how it turned out, and so I just continued buying wood kits and just got hooked. Okay, let's see. Painting the sky. Now, I get asked this a lot, and I know that in the first video that I did when I started my layout, I had painted the wall. Just quick did it, and you just saw me really fast painting it. And I am going to do another video, probably, I would say sometime in January, possibly the beginning of February, where I paint a sky behind the new section that we're working on. And I will go into detail and tell you the colors, explain what brushes I'm using, how I'm doing it. Sometimes, I'll be honest with you, sometimes when I put out a video and just show you afterwards maybe how I did something, it's because I'm unsure of how it's going to look or how I'm going to do it. And always after I'm done, I'm like, oh, I probably should have filmed the whole thing. But honestly, I don't know how it's going to turn out. I don't know if I'm going to have to scratch the project and just start over again on it. So I didn't really know I didn't know how that wall was going to turn out. And I didn't know if I would just have to take the paint roller and just paint it white again or a light blue and start over completely. So, but like I said, I have a video coming up where I'll go into detail on how to paint a sky. Let's see, what else? Real dirt. Real dirt. Now, I've always used real dirt. I think I must have read it in a modeling magazine when I was young. I live in Colorado, and I just take a bucket and a shovel and get some dirt. I do not bake it. I have never baked dirt. Now, possibly if you live back east, if the soil is kind of, it's more damp, possibly. In Colorado, believe it or not, it's pretty dry. It's pretty dry here. And again, I get my dirt in the summertime. And then I take strainers. I probably have 3 different size strainers. And I just run the dirt through the strainer so that I have super fine, a medium, and then a heavy. You know, obviously I start with the largest strainer that I have, and I keep them all in coffee containers. So I strain it and keep the heavier stuff in the first one. Then I strain more dirt. Maybe I'll take half of that, strain it through a smaller one. So now I have a medium size. I take some of that, put it through the final strainer, which is super fine. And now I have a container of really fine dirt. So again, to answer the question, I have never baked my dirt. Okay, motivation. How do I keep so motivated? Honestly, I'm motivated by so many different things. I can watch a movie and find motivation in that movie, and it'll spark something that makes me want to go into my shop and just start creating. Maybe good advice would be to be on the lookout for motivation. I love Instagram. There is so much creativity on Instagram. And I can look at a watercolor artist and find motivation in it. Again, it's just so creative. And I think that a lot of people will say, well, it's hard to get followers. It's hard to sort of get a group on there. And first off, don't be worried about getting followers. First off, just create an account on Instagram and start following other modelers. Follow people that motivate you. It doesn't even have to be model railroading. If you see someone that does oil painting or acrylic painting that you really like, start following those people and let it motivate you. Notice maybe their creative process, and let that be your motivation. And just like movies or shows, I will just see things, I'll get ideas of the way something's built or the way someone is acting, like the way someone has overcome this struggle in their life and now they've accomplished so much, and that story motivates me to want to accomplish a whole bunch in my life. I love stuff like that. It really motivates me, and I know that I just said spending time on internet and watching movies or watching television shows, but at the same time you can do too much of that. Sometimes I'll watch a show and think, geez, I could be in my shop building something or working on my layout. So stay motivated, but also keep in mind the big picture. So I know what I want to create and the time frame that I want to create it in. So really look at the big picture, and I don't know if you need to write it down on paper, maybe put a sign in front of your work area, but definitely maybe create a list of saying, the size of your layout. Break it into, what do you want to do in a year? In 10 years, where do you want to be on your layout? Or in building your dioramas. I think writing things down on paper is good. I used to do that a lot. I wrote everything down and had little Post-its in my office, in my workshop. But I kind of got away from that. A lot of it, I guess, is just in my head. After a while, it just becomes sort of second nature. If you practice it, if you keep pushing yourself in a certain direction and staying motivated by other people that maybe are going in that same direction, after a while, it just sort of becomes second nature for you. Hopefully that answers that question on how I stay motivated. The music that I use on my channel. So many people ask me. First off, I love blues. I love anything with a lot of guitar in it. If I had to pick my favorite type of music, I would probably say the blues. But again, I love so many different types of music, especially stuff that has a lot of guitar in it. But I just respect anyone who really, I respect people that are creative. Whether you're writing stories, writing poems, creating music. I'm not one to ever say that I hate something. First off, I think hate is a very strong word. And I may not like it. There may be a country song that people don't like. Well, there's so much behind it that someone wrote it. There's all different band members that play different instruments to create that song. There's producers. There's someone in the recording studio that is making it sound a certain way on a mixing board. And then you have all the people that actually, the companies that made all the instruments, or people that built the recording studio. There's so much that you don't think about that goes into creating one song. And I so appreciate that. I really do. So maybe there's a song that I don't really care for, but I can appreciate the hours and the creativity that went into creating that one song. So, back to the question. The songs that are on my channel are all from YouTube. As a YouTube creator, there is a library of music that you can search through to find music for your videos. And I always stick with YouTube because I just don't ever want to have a video tagged where maybe YouTube thinks that it's not a royalty-free song that I'm using, that I'm stealing it from someone. So I strictly stick with YouTube. Now I know there's other websites that have free music that you can download, that you can use. I just don't ever want to risk one of my videos getting shut down because of the music. And I gotta tell you, it's so funny. I get comments where people are like, I love your videos. Can you do away with the music? They don't like the music. Then I have other people that love the music. They want to hear more. That's one thing with creating videos. I know that I can't please everyone. It's just impossible. There's people that don't like certain things about my videos, and then I turn around and read a comment where someone else loves that thing that someone else didn't like. I try to make videos that motivate people. That maybe you'll watch my video, it sparks an interest, and now all of a sudden you're in your workshop or you're doing something on the layout, but now all of a sudden you're starting something, like I said, in the workshop or on the layout or on your diorama. Because I think sometimes the hardest thing is just simply getting started. And if I can just spark that small interest in getting you building or doing something creative, then I've succeeded. It just thrills me when people say that I've motivated them to start a project, start a structure, to get back after all these years back into the hobby, doing something on their layout, anything. Because like I said, I think the hardest thing sometimes is just getting motivated to walk into your layout room or walk into your work area and just simply get started. I had two questions about fitting corners, especially when you're working on a structure that don't have square corners. Maybe it's more of a triangle shaped building. So you're working with different angles for your corners. Files. Either get online, look at Amazon. I don't know, there's probably different websites. Go to a hardware store and see if you can buy different sized files. One of the most used tools in my shop are files. I have all different shaped files, round ones, flat ones, angled ones, ones that are shaped like triangles. Files are so important. You want to make sure that your walls are, first, bracing is important. Now, do yourself a favor and visit, any place that sells scale wood. I use Northeastern scale lumber, and I heavily brace the back of my walls. You want to make sure that your walls are perfectly straight and flat before you assemble them. Then with your file those corners and go slow. It may take you multiple passes. It may take you a long time, but make sure that you're filing those corners so that when you put them together, just by holding it, not even gluing it, just holding it up to it, that it fits perfectly. So test fit it, file it some more. Test fit it, file it some more. And then after you get it exactly how you want it, then glue it together. I think too many people try to glue it together and clamp it, put rubber bands around it. They're trying to manipulate it so that it fits together perfectly. You want to try to have it fit together perfectly before you ever glue it. That's going to save you a huge headache. So if there's any type of warping, even if it's just a little bit, you need to try to flatten that wall out first. And there's different techniques for flattening it. You know, if it curves one way, maybe wet the opposite side of it, use a hair dryer to blow dry it, and just try to get it as flat as humanly possible. Maybe get it wet and put some weights on it until it completely dries. And again, just file, even if it's a 90-degree angle, you want to make sure that you file both pieces so that they match up perfectly to go together. Hopefully that answers that. I've built multiple layouts. I think I'm on my third layout, and I've built layouts for clients. I've built models for clients. And I used to plan everything. With a layout, I sort of did it by the rules. And if you've noticed, if you've watched my videos for a while now, I do not go by the rules. I definitely do not. Being an artist and being creative, I get better results by not planning. Now, that may not work for you, but it works for me. I will start maybe with a drawing or a plan in my head, and then start building. Let my creativity guide me. So if I'm working on it and I'm going through some detailed parts and I'm like, oh, this would be great. This would look better on it than what I had planned. I'm just not locked into one certain plan. If something motivates me to take it in a different direction, I am open to that. And I'll give you a good example on my current layout. Originally, when I started it, which has been just a little over a year now, I had a plan. I had a plan of where city would go, where industry would be, where all the water would be. I've gotten away from it. I really have. And it's because I see other kits that are coming out, or I discover new modelers on Facebook or Instagram that are motivating me to maybe go in a different direction. I've really fallen in love with waterfront structures and sort of water scenes. And so that's sort of the direction that I'm going, at least on the outer edge of my layout. But I'm open to change. I really am. I still want to do on the opposite side of where I have been building, doing a complete city scene. I'm not going to go as big as I was going to. I wanted to do a huge city scene with skyscrapers, and I don't know if I have that interest as much as I used to. But I definitely want to do a subway, an old subway that's, again, probably going to be pretty run down, pretty dirty looking, just a bad part of town. So same with the city above it. It'll be a really rough area. I don't plan on doing a nice city scene with nice tall skyscrapers, with clean roads and everything. No, it's going to be a very old, rundown part of town. So same with the industrial stuff. It'll be just really old, dirty, a lot of rust. As it evolves, a year from now, I may have different interests. So it may change. So again, for me, I'm not locked into one thing. And it holds true with a structure. When I start it, it may start out a certain way, and by the end of the build, I'm talking 1 week, I'm talking 3 days. It may change because I may have watched a movie or seen a show or seen something on Instagram and thought, that's a great idea. I've never done that. I'm going to try that. And I try it on the new model, which gets into a whole nother topic of not being afraid. So I know a lot of people will buy a structure based on the picture of the model. And they're like, oh, I want that on my layout, or I want that on my diorama. And they want to build it just like the picture on the box which is fine. There is nothing wrong with that. That's how I started. Definitely, I would just copy the look of the building on the box. But now, obviously now, if you've seen any of my work on Facebook or YouTube, you know that now I want to change it. I want to make it almost unrecognizable, where people are like, well, what kit is that? And I don't have that fear. I just don't have that fear. And it takes a while. It takes a while to get to that point. Not being worried, because you're like, I've spent all this money on this expensive kit. I don't want to screw it up. But the more you practice, the more you get out of your comfort zone, the more skills you'll learn and the more confidence that you'll build. And then you just won't be afraid to take a kit and completely change it. That's a huge thing. I guess my number one advice probably would be to build confidence. That is huge. That just huge in life in general. But to get confident in your model building, I know for myself, and hopefully this helps some of you. Hopefully it helps at least one person. But to know who you are, and I'll use myself as an example. If I had to say in one word who I am, I would say that I am creative. I am creative in my art. I am creative in being a dad. I am creative in being a husband. I am creative with my finances. I try to bring creativity to everything that I do. Now, it's not always possible, and that's why there's things that I'm just not good at, and that I have to find someone else that can do it. Working on computers. Some people may say that, oh yeah, you can be creative at that. For me, I am not. I definitely have to find someone that is comfortable with computers and technology, which thankfully is my son. My son is incredible at technology and computers, and so he's the one I go to when I need help on that. But back to my point, being confident, being extremely confident in what you're doing. So as far as modeling, just getting past that fear, getting past that initial fear of messing it up. And if you're worried, like I said, find a company like any wood company. Again, I use Northeastern Scale Lumber, but buy some wood, not a lot, just buy some wood, stuff that you can practice on. Buy a couple sheets of clapboard siding and then just cut it into squares and practice. And that doesn't mean you have to set aside a day and do a whole bunch of squares all differently. So every time you start a structure, take that piece of clapboard siding, a little square, and try a different technique on it. Try a color that you haven't used before. Just experiment with it and then go to the model. It's just a lot of practicing and a lot of experimenting. And before long, it does not take that long. You'll get confident in trying new techniques and you'll be off and running. So I had a question that actually brought me to tears. tears of happiness. My daughter watched my last video where I asked everyone to leave a question for this video. And she left me a question. And I'm in Colorado, and she's attending college out of state in Iowa. And her question was, how does it feel to be the best dad ever? And yeah, just incredible. Love you, Jazz, and miss you. Like I'd mentioned before, I'm a creative person, and I try to be a creative father. And I've always loved being a dad. Everything about it. Sure, there's hard days, there's hard months. But overall, I really enjoy kids and love being a father. So thank you, Jazz. It feels great. It feels great. So I was asked, have you ever entered contests? And if so, what are the benefits? So yes, I used to enter many contests. And as you can see, I just have a lot of ribbons. I have certificates. Certificates are in a folder somewhere. Here is Modeler of the Year, the Craftsman category. That was 2009. Back in 2008, Modeler of the Year, the Modeler class. I loved entering contests. And you can learn so much. I recommend it to anyone that is doing modeling, any type of modeling. Again, there's just so much that you can learn from it if you want to. Now, for myself, every contest that I entered, I would talk to other people that entered it and the judges, and I would want their advice on what I could do to improve, what would make this entry better, what can I do in the future to become better. So you can learn so much from entering contests, and I think it's important to leave your ego at the door and really honestly just try to get as much advice as possible when entering contests. And I definitely saw an improvement in my modeling during the time period where I was entering contests. So again, it's so important to take that advice and apply it so that you're constantly improving. Don't just enter contests to get approval. It's great, don't get me wrong. Everyone wants approval on, they want to feel good about what they've done, what they've created, but also use it as a learning experience. Okay, so the question I probably get asked the most is, where do you get your figures and your vehicles? Now, most of the figures that I use are Preiser. But I also use figures from Woodland Scenic, from Lifelike. Now, what I do is figures that are very visible, that are in the foreground or the closest to the viewer, are going to be the better looking figures, or the more expensive figures maybe. Then the further back you get, the more simplified figures that you can use. So figures that are way in the background can be maybe your more inexpensive figures that are just very simply painted. And you can always go in and touch them up. Now, as far as vehicles, I love mini metals by a company called Classic Metal Works. I just love these because they're already done. I don't have to assemble these. I don't have to paint them. I have painted some. I did show in the pictures that I just showed a before and after. So you can buy 3 of these and paint them all differently if you want. Now, there are other vehicles. There's just so many vehicles out there. I always tell people, do a Google search for HO scale vehicles or N scale vehicles or O scale, whatever scale you're in. But be specific in your search. You're going to find more that way. Be specific in the year, the type of vehicle. Now, for those that aren't maybe comfortable with doing a search on Google for vehicles, what I did years ago, I will show you. I would get catalogs from Walthers. Now, I have 2. This one is 2005, and this one is 2011. Again, this is Walthers. This catalog has every company in it. And you'll see up in the corner, there's different colors. So we'll go to figures. Let's just go to figures. So up in the corner, every page that has figures is red. And there is every company. There's just page after page. And you can see there's just tons. Now, you can order directly from Walthers, or you can see if the manufacturer has a website and order directly from them. You can contact your local hobby store and have them order for you. There's so many different ways to get product. But my point is that you can find all the different manufacturers in these catalogs. Now, again, this one is 2005 and this one is 2011. I don't really need to buy these catalogs anymore, or I certainly don't need to buy one every year. But that's how I started out. And then that led me to doing searches on the internet for all different companies. And then I would just simply bookmark those on my computer and just go directly to them. This was a lot of fun for me. It really was. For the longest time, I think I was putting off doing a Q&A video, but I really enjoyed it. So hopefully we can do it again soon. And, you know, I would love to answer more questions, maybe some questions that maybe are a little off topic. It doesn't necessarily have to be with modeling. So I'll let you know when we'll do another one. So until next time, stay motivated and happy modeling, everyone.